Just hours before signing away a $500 million inheritance to her adopted kids, something unthinkable happened. Eleanor Johnson, an elderly woman who had given up everything to raise two children she found abandoned, believed she was leaving them a life of comfort. But the night before her will was finalized, she lingered by their bedroom door, and froze. Through the small gap, she caught their whispers. They were scheming to tamper with her medicine, laughing about how soon her fortune would be theirs. Her heart cracked, but instead of breaking, she quietly laid a plan. And when the moment of the will signing arrived, it wasn't the lawyer who stepped through her door. Eleanor Johnson hadn't been born wealthy. Far from it. She was built on grit, quiet endurance, and sacrifices no one ever applauded. Her skin had softened with age, but her hands still showed the wear of long hours over wash tubs, scrubbing floors, and stitching clothes beneath a single dim lamp. Folks around her block in Chicago used to say, "That woman works too hard for too little." What they never saw was her resolve. She wasn't just surviving, she was determined to give the world something better. That chance arrived one icy evening when Eleanor came across two children huddled beneath an overpass. A boy and a girl, no older than 7 or 8, skinny, dirty, and trembling. Their clothes were in rags, their stomachs empty. Most people passed by, muttering, "Where are their parents? Street rats." But Eleanor stopped. She knelt down, pulled off her old wool scarf, and wrapped it around their shoulders. That night, she brought them home. Her little house in Chicago barely had room for one, yet she made space for 3. She shared her meals, her bed, and even her worn slippers when the floor grew cold in winter. From that night on, she called them hers. Life only got tougher. Eleanor skipped meals so the kids could eat. She walked instead of taking the bus, so there'd be enough for pencils and notebooks. When her back gave out from years of hard labor, she fought through the pain, reminding herself, "They need you, Eleanor. Just one more day. One more shift." Neighbors noticed. Some pitied her, some admired her. "She's raising 2 strangers at her age. She's either a saint or a fool." Others warned, "Street kids never repay kindness, one day they'll walk out and leave her." But Eleanor tuned them out. At night, when she saw those children fast asleep with full bellies and calm faces, she knew she'd made the right choice. They weren't abandoned anymore. They were her family. Time passed. The children grew taller, smarter, stronger. They called her Mama in public. And that single word erased every ache in her body. To Eleanor, they weren't charity. They were her legacy, proof that love didn't need blood to be real. But underneath her sacrifices was a truth she never spoke aloud. She gave them everything because she had no one else. She had never married, never had children of her own, never had anyone to call her name at the dinner table. Those 2 kids weren't just her dependents, they were her entire world. And for them, she would endure anything, poverty, hunger, ridicule. She believed her sacrifices were planting seeds, seeds that would grow into loyalty, gratitude, and love. She couldn't have known that what she was really growing would turn into something else entirely. Eleanor's life had always been pieced together from scraps, scraps of money, scraps of luck, scraps of food. But she never stopped turning little into more. At first, it didn't look like much. She scraped together a few dollars from scrubbing kitchens and bought a small plot of land just outside Dallas. Neighbors chuckled when she planted vegetables on soil they called worthless. "That dirt won't grow a thing," one man scoffed. Yet, season after season, her garden produced enough to sell at the market. A handful of coins here, a few wrinkled bills there, it slowly added up. Then came her second chance. A friend mentioned a cooperative in Dallas where women could invest tiny amounts into small businesses. Eleanor Johnson scraped together what she had, even selling her late mother's jewelry, and joined. It was a gamble, but she believed in growth, nurturing things the way she had nurtured her kids. Little by little, the profits trickled back. Over the years, every dollar was tucked carefully away. That single patch of dirt outside Dallas turned into several acres. Vegetables became livestock, livestock became property, and property became shares. What began as a handful of savings grew into a fortune. Her children hardly noticed at first. To them, Mama was just Mama, always tired, always limping, but always there with a hot meal and a sharp reminder to study. They never saw the ledgers she kept at night, her neat handwriting adding and subtracting under the glow of a candle. Others noticed, though. Did you hear? Eleanor owns 3 houses now. At her age? Must be luck. Some said she was smarter than they thought. Some admired her, others resented her. But through it all, Eleanor stayed grounded. Every acre, every coin, every bit of progress was for her children. She never cared about luxury. Her house stayed modest, her clothes still patched. But for them? She wanted everything. As her wealth grew, so did her pride. She'd sit on her porch, watching the Texas sunset, whispering, "They'll never know hunger like I did. They'll never walk barefoot in the cold. I've given them everything." By her late 70s, Eleanor's fortune had passed $500 million. To the world, she was a success story. To her, it was simple, love had multiplied. She believed the kids she rescued would someday carry that love forward. But wealth doesn't always grow what you expect. Sometimes it breeds something darker. By the time Eleanor turned 79, her body had grown fragile. Years of hauling buckets, walking long miles, and shouldering burdens no one else would carry had left her bones brittle and her heart unreliable, sometimes beating too slow, sometimes racing too fast. She tried to hide it from the kids. When her chest clenched, she'd grip the counter until her breathing steadied. When her knees buckled, she laughed it off, saying, "Old age, that's all." But behind closed doors, the truth pressed harder every day. Time was no longer on her side. Doctors urged her to rest. Pills filled her bedside table, each with careful instructions she often forgot. Some nights, she'd stare at them, wondering if it was worth continuing. But then her eyes would catch the family portraits on the wall, the kids in their school uniforms, those hard-won smiles, and she'd whisper, "Not yet. They still need me," before swallowing her medicine. It was during this time she made her decision. If her body was failing, her legacy couldn't. She wanted no doubts, no arguments, no outsiders clawing for her estate. Every acre of land, every share, every hard-earned cent would belong to the 2 children she'd raised. She called her lawyer, an old friend who'd watched her climb from rags to riches. Together, they started drafting her will. Sitting at her desk, her shaky hand struggled to sign the first page. Her chest rose and fell as she thought, "This is it. My life's work, all for them." The children seemed supportive. They asked about her health, reminded her to take her pills, urged her to rest. To anyone looking in, it looked like love. And for a moment, Eleanor let herself believe it. But cracks were there, no matter how she tried to ignore them. A glance too sharp when they thought she wasn't watching. Conversations that hushed the second she entered the room. She told herself it was nothing, that they would never betray her. Still, the unease lingered. That night, the house felt too quiet. The kind of silence that presses heavy, like the air itself was waiting. Eleanor sat in her armchair, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, the steady tick of the clock the only sound in the room. Eleanor Johnson was supposed to be resting, but her body refused to give in. Her mind kept racing, chasing worries she couldn't quite catch. That's when she heard it, a faint shuffle, the creak of a floorboard down the hallway. There were voices. Low. Urgent. Too close. Eleanor leaned forward, holding her breath. It was them, her children. At first, she thought maybe they were talking about chores or money. But then the words cut through the crack in the door. "Why wait so long? She's already weak. If she goes faster, everything's ours. The will's already signed. Her chest thudded hard, each beat echoing painfully inside her. Her fingers dug into the armrest, trembling. The pills, just adjust them. She'll never notice. Who questions a sick old woman? Her breath caught. Her mouth dried. She wanted to leap up, storm out, and scream, "How could you?" But her legs refused to move. So she sat frozen, listening as the truth carved itself into her bones. The very children she had pulled off the cold streets, the ones she fed while she went hungry, were planning to end her life. Not strangers. Not outsiders. Her children. Tears stung her eyes, blurring the lamp, the clock, even the floor beneath her feet. For a moment, she thought she might collapse. She pressed a hand to her chest, forcing air into her lungs. Outside, two neighbors stood near the fence, their voices drifting faintly through the open window. "She's looking weaker these days." "Yeah, but those kids will be set for life." "Lucky them." Eleanor almost laughed through her tears. If only they knew. Inside, the whispers ended with a laugh. A cruel, casual laugh that pierced deeper than any blade. Their footsteps faded into the kitchen, leaving Eleanor in silence, her body shaking, her heart cracking wide open. Her whole life had been a gamble on love. And tonight, she realized she'd lost. But even in that grief, a spark ignited. Betrayal had cut her, yes, but it hadn't finished her. Not yet. And before her time came, Eleanor decided she wouldn't leave this world quietly. She didn't sleep that night. Her body stayed in the armchair, but her spirit was pacing. Betrayal gnawed at her chest. But beneath the hurt, something firmer began to take shape, a decision. By dawn, she had dried her tears and steadied her hands. She reached for the phone. The number she dialed wasn't her lawyer's. It was the Dallas precinct. Her voice wavered at first, then grew strong. She recounted every word she'd overheard, each one burned into her memory. The officer listened quietly before asking, "Mrs. Johnson, do you feel safe right now?" Safe. The word felt bitter. No, she wasn't safe. Not in her own home. Not with the children she once called her own. But she straightened her back and answered, "I will be." The police told her to stay calm, to act natural, and let them handle the rest. But natural was the hardest thing to fake when your heart was shattered. All that day, she moved as though nothing had changed. She boiled tea, folded laundry, even hummed softly in the kitchen. When the children passed her in the hallway, she gave them a smile, a weak, trembling smile, but a smile nonetheless. Inside, her stomach twisted. That evening, she made her move. "Tomorrow," she said casually over dinner, her fork barely touching her plate, "the lawyer's coming. We'll sign everything. All of it will finally be yours." Their faces lit up. They exchanged a glance, a flash of greed quick enough to fool anyone else. But Eleanor caught it. Her heart cracked again, though she kept her lips stretched into a soft grin. Later, she made one more call. This time, it was to invite them to a celebration dinner. Her voice was warm, almost cheerful. "One last family meal before I put it all in writing," she told them. Behind those words, she carried silence like a weapon. That night, as she set the table for the next day, her hands trembled with every dish she placed down. The clink of silverware against a porcelain plate nearly betrayed her nerves. Eleanor Johnson froze, gripping the counter until the tremor in her hands passed. Outside, two neighbors strolled past her lit window. "She's still looking after those kids at her age," one said. "That woman never stops." "Well, she won't have to much longer. They'll inherit everything. She'll finally rest, and they'll live easy." If only they knew what was simmering behind that glass. By the time Eleanor eased herself into a chair, exhaustion pressed against her bones. Yet deep in her chest flickered a strength she hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow, she told herself, would be their undoing. The next evening, the house glowed warmly beneath soft lamps. The table was set with her best dishes, each one placed with care. To anyone glancing in, it looked like a family dinner, a celebration before a mother handed her life's work to her children. The children arrived dressed sharp, their grins wide, their laughter light. They kissed her cheek, pulled out their chairs, and sat down like royalty already seated on $500 million. Eleanor sat opposite them, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. She forced herself to sip her tea, nod politely, and chuckle at their shallow jokes. Inside, her heart weighed heavy, her pulse steady only because she had prepared herself for this very night. Halfway through the meal, a knock rattled the front door. The children's eyes lit up. "That must be the lawyer," one whispered, already picturing the signatures, the deeds, the ownership papers. But when the door opened, it wasn't a lawyer who walked in. It was the police. The officers stepped inside, badges glinting beneath the lamplight, their voices calm but firm. "Mrs. Johnson," one asked gently. She nodded. Then came the words, "We're here on charges of attempted harm and conspiracy against you." Confusion swept across the children's faces, quickly twisting into panic. "This is a mistake," they stammered. But it wasn't. The evidence Eleanor had given, the overheard whispers, the tampered pill bottles, the recorded phone calls, was undeniable. As the handcuffs snapped shut, Eleanor didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just sat there, tired, yes, but alive. When the officers led them out, the door closed, leaving silence behind. Eleanor's chest rose and fell slowly, as though she'd finally let go of years of fear in a single breath. In the weeks that followed, she rewrote her will. Not for the children who betrayed her, but for children like the ones she had once found, abandoned, forgotten, still aching for love. Her estate would fund shelters, scholarships, homes that would stand long after her own body was gone. The betrayal had cut her deep. But her legacy, she knew, would heal wounds deeper than her own. Because family isn't just who you raise or who you sign papers for. Family is who protects your heart when the world tries to break it. Eleanor Johnson's story is proof that betrayal can come from the people closest to you, but justice has a way of finding its place. Now I'll ask you, what would you have done if you were in her shoes? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories like this one.